Morning, Dad.
Hey, going for a run?
Yeah, you should join me like you used to.
Not with my old knees and back.
Try Xanthicin. It could really help. Plus, it's super safe, Dad, and it's good for your heart and brain.
Xanthicin fights aging with astaxanthin, nature's most powerful antioxidant. And with 3 times the absorption and superior purity, it's the brand physicians trust. Find it at getxantho.com and these retailers. Keep doing what you love with Xanthicin.
All right, how's it going, everybody? Episode 28 of Hawaii Football, now presented by Xanthicin. Big mahalo to our other sponsors, Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. We record episode 28 here on this Tuesday, midday, about 11 o'clock a.m. Hawaii time, as we are scheduled for release, our usual Thursday morning release. That'll be March 10th already. We're just basically, as we record this, Hunter, 2 weeks out from spring practices. We will get into that a little bit more in depth in this episode, kind of throughout the dates last week. Again, a big mahalo to our first ever guest last week in Coach Jacob Yoro, the defensive coordinator for the University of Hawaii football team. But a big shout out. Hunter and I are sort of doing this solo on the recording side. We usually have our producer, Jaren Kobashigawa, who is ably standing by to make sure we don't go off the rails. We don't somehow just ruin the podcast and end this for everybody. But he is up in Vegas, accompanying the ESPN Honolulu team in terms of our coverage of the Big West Basketball Championships. Of course, shout out to Laura Beeman and the Rainbow Wahine, who clinched the Big West regular season championship this past Saturday at the Stan. They are the number 1 overall seed. They await the winner of a first-round game today. They play the early quarterfinal on Wednesday. You can hear that on ESPN Honolulu. Bowie Curran and the crew got you covered. So be sure to tune in. Obviously, by the time this airs, we will know whether the Rainbow Wahine have won or they will be playing in a semifinal on Friday. The men, though, don't play until Thursday night. They play 6:30 Hawaii time, 8:30 Vegas time on Thursday night in their opener. They have been sort of perennial one-and-dones in the tournament. We'll see maybe this year they can change the tide a little bit, change their fortunes. So shout out to the basketball squads. You can catch all the action right here on the ESPN Honolulu family of networks via the Sideline Hawaii app, as well as streaming online. All the shows kind of got you covered throughout the day as well on your daily drive. And then also shout out to our guy, Jaren, who's up in Vegas, who's got to work. But as these trips are, they're working trips, right, Hunter? So for our little opening drive, we just wanted to send a little tip of the cap to Jaren, we hope we will be sending him the recording of this to splice up, put together, and get it ready for Thursday morning. So we're taking away a little bit of his free time as he is going to be working hard on this podcast.
Yeah. For those listening at home, Jaren's kind of like our dad that makes sure that we're going in the right path and, overlooking us. We are flying solo today. So we hope this reaches you well. And if it has, it's 100% on Jaren. So yeah, thanks, man.
We were preemptively giving him credit for stitching this thing together. Yeah. And you never know, though. Supervision leaves the room. Things can get a little wonky. So we'll see how it goes for sure. All right, transitioning into our game time. Again, Jordan Helle, Hunter Hughes with you here on episode 28, already nearing episode 30. Crazy to think. Again, big thanks to Coach Yoro for joining us last week. Got some good feedback from folks that, are kind enough to listen or view the podcast. Not to toot our own horn on this, but just kind of, I think the feedback directed toward what Coach Yoro had to say. Some excitement there, obviously, his discussing his roots, right? His ties to the community. We debriefed a little bit last week, Hunter, but to go a little bit further on this, some of your reactions to what we heard from Coach last week as this is a pivotal transition time for the program.
I definitely think it is. Coach Yoro was talking about what sort of a culture on the team that they're going to create, playing together, playing fast, playing tough. all of the things that you want to hear as an alumni, as a fan. That's kind of the Hawaii mantra that is Rainbow Warrior football. So yeah, first and foremost, my reaction was that this is exactly what I want to hear, and got me excited for spring ball coming up in just a couple of weeks. And it feels very eerily similar, Jordan, from Chow transitioning into the Rolo era. We just got through some of the most tumultuous years, in my opinion, at least from a public relations standpoint, of University of Hawaii football. And we seem to be transitioning out of that and transitioning out of COVID protocols too, that we're turning a new leaf with Hawaii football, it seems, right now, and we're moving forward. It seems like these coaches have the right heart, the right spirit, and an ability to relate to their players in a positive way. So I couldn't be more happy with what I see.
Yeah, and I thought it was pretty interesting, and I heard some comments from other people as well talking about how I think self-aware Coach Yoro is, how neat it really is that he is so invested in the community as a guy who grew up here, as a guy who played his football, right, locally before going away to play college, has found his way back home, and how valuable that is, right? But also comes with a little different kind of pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like he said, he doesn't want to live elsewhere. He doesn't want to have to find himself in a position where he didn't get the job done here. I think he even said, something along the lines of basically, hey, he can't fail, right? Like that's not really an option when it comes to, hey, this is sort of his dream job, coaching at home with all of the advantages that come with it. There is a bit of a different pressure for somebody, from the islands to say, hey, look, we can't really screw this up because we kind of got a little more invested in this than say maybe another job you take on the mainland or something like that. Not to downplay those, or maybe even a step up the ladder at some point should he have a successful career. But it's a different kind of pressure, and it was kind of interesting and I think refreshing to hear him sort of admit that, like he's very okay with that, and I think it in part is a driving factor towards the work he's putting in.
Yeah, totally. We talked about it in the interview, but then I just kind of want to reiterate it, that one of the ways that I think Hawaii needs to progress into the future is breaking that mold of every 4 to 5 years, bringing in a new head coach, a new regime, a new style, a new way of integrating with the community, sometimes not integrating with the community at all. And then we seem, for every 2 steps forward, we take 3 steps back with University of Hawaii football. And at least with this coaching staff, with so much Hawaii ties, you have a stronger chance. Again, each coach, each family, each situation is different, but you do have a stronger chance that these guys do have long-lasting ties in the islands. And this could be what they would say is a somewhat permanent dream job position in college football. So I think right now, optimistically speaking, this is strategized towards breaking that mold right now. At least that's what I'm seeing it as. And definitely with Coach Yoro, he wants to be here. This is what you just mentioned too, potentially a dream job for him. So yeah, I'm stoked that he's our DC, man, especially with some of the numbers they put up this last year. He's the right guy for the job.
Yeah, he's learned from a bunch of a different kind of minds as well, Todd Graham included, and that's one thing that you could not take away from the Todd Graham football teams. Like their defenses that took the football away, they produced on that side of the ball. And the other thing that I was kind of curious, and I like, and I think you as well, as just sort of football guys, to get into some of the X's and O's and try to find out what a scheme is going to look like. And I was sort of appreciative because and not that I blame any other coach out there and past coaches that I've had the opportunity to interview, but sometimes you ask them, it's like, okay, what's the scheme going to look like? What's your defense? What's your offense going to look like? And then they talk to you about sort of big picture, like we're going to play hard, we're going to play fast, we're going to score a lot of points on offense. It's like, okay, how are you going to do that though? And I was very, pleasantly surprised that Coach Yoro went into a little more detail. He talked about some of those big concepts, right? He talked about some of those things. In terms of, hey, we're gonna play fast. We're gonna be well well disciplined. We're going to come with a
ground
certain
up.
yeah, and so, but he also talked about the reality of the situation, right? That in today's college football, like you can't run one defense, like you have to be multiple. The way the offense is and the rules in particular are geared towards scoring and geared towards offensive football. You got to be multiple. You got to be able to disguise. You got to be able to show different looks. You got to be able to adapt and adjust to different formations, different personnel groupings that you're going to see on the other side of the football. But it's so fascinating to hear coaches, because at the end of the day, these guys are teachers, right? They're educators. Talk about, hey, how are we going to do all of that while keeping it as simple as possible? Like, how do we do that? How do we take the complicated and make it simple so these guys can go out there, understand, and then play fast and execute and do those kinds of things? And those are the kinds of things. And maybe, to some, it's kind of boring. It's a lot of minutia and whatnot. But I just find that stuff so fascinating, because that is ultimately that at the end of the day, right? You've got to be able to, in the span of 40 seconds between snaps, figure out what the heck the other guy on the other side of the ball is doing, adjust to it, get the signal in, get everybody, all 11 on the field, to understand what that signal is, what their responsibility is given that thing. And then maybe at some point in the middle of all of that, change everything around because somebody motioned or they shifted formation, they subbed somebody in, something like that. Like all of that, it just the chaos that accompanies between snaps, the 40 seconds, how he's going to get to that point where they can go out and execute continuously. It's kind of fun to pick the mind of a guy like, Coach Yoro.
Yeah. And hearing his perspective, even right now, in the heat of recruiting season, just what new challenges, new opportunities as well he's facing, along with the entire staff, with the transfer portal, with this brand new frontier of college football. And just to kind of talk shop with him in a sense there, because we've never really faced anything like this before. If players were able to transfer, it was always after they've already graduated, or there was some sort of external extenuating circumstance that the NCAA allowed a player to transfer. Now it's kind of like the Wild West. And so, along with what you were saying in terms of scheme, a lot of this is going to be kind of going to need to be morphed and edited kind of on the fly, I would say, from this coaching staff, depending on what sort of pieces they're able to fill in the greater puzzle that is our defense. So I tip my cap to him. You hit the nail on the head, Jordan. He's got his work cut out for him, and I wish him all the best.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We hope to get some further interviews as we go throughout the off season, as we near spring practice as well. Our guy Kavika on Facebook, sort of echoing one of your points, Hunter, the longevity of a coaching staff like that could be huge for this program. But of course, you never know how long these things last, right? You never know what opportunities come down the road or things don't work out. And so a lot of that's aspirational for sure, but it's got to start somewhere, right? And for this University of Hawaii football staff, a lot of it starts in a couple of weeks. Like, they are doing a lot of the groundwork for future years, don't get me wrong. And later on in the pod, we will discuss some of the recent additions, some of the big recruiting weekends that kicked off sort of last weekend. But really, for the 2022 season, can't even keep track of the years at this point. It's all a blur since like March 2020.
Yeah.
It really kicks off with spring football, and that's in 2 weeks. And I know you will be there for a lot of the practices. I know you're pretty excited about that. We mentioned last week that all practices are going to be open to the public. They've got a fun spring game Island Day thing themed for April 16th with fan experience and entertainment and keiki zones, food, beer garden, all that kind of stuff. But again, the dates: March 22nd, 24th, 26th, 29th, 31st, and then in April the 2nd, which will be a scrimmage, the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, which will be another scrimmage, the 12th, the 14th, the 16th, which is that spring game Island Day, and then they wrap things up with practices on April 19th, 21st, and 23rd. So kind of expanding a little bit on this as well, Hunter, what for you, what are the big priorities for spring practice coming up that this team, has to address, has to get to work on as they build for the fall?
I think first of all, it's unity. I want to see a togetherness from the guys that are still here. Obviously, a lot can change from spring to fall camp in terms of players coming in, sometimes new graduate assistants coming in. The look of a team can look different from April to August whenever you're getting ready to play your first game. But with everything that's gone down in the past few months with a coaching change, a mass exodus of our players in the transfer portal, one of the first things I'm wanting to see down there on the field for spring football will be unity, a united team environment. And then just I'm curious to see what sort of team we put out there, both with players, but then scheme as well. I want to see what we're doing on offense. On the defensive side of the football, we're going to have so many new people playing different positions and just kind of figuring it out as we go. For those listening at home, this is one of the best times to see a complete renovation of Hawaii football from the ground up, both from a players and a coaching perspective. So if you want to see, 6, 7, 8 years down the road when we return to glory and we're competing for a Mountain West championship, this is where it starts right now. That's kind of what I'm looking at as what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the chance to view it, like the chance for fans to actually be there, take that in. How valuable is that? And for players, they these poor guys, man, they for the last couple of years they've been practicing in front of nobody. We understand why. For over almost 3/4 of the time the last 2 seasons, playing in front of nobody, right, at home games. So how much of a boost is that as well to have, a crowd basically at practices to kick off this season?
Yeah, I mean, when they start doing scrimmages and just real full contact hitting, those oohs, those ahs, they make a difference. And you mentioned it, Jordan. A lot of these guys haven't experienced what the rest of us would associate with being a Rainbow Warrior football player. Having alumni down there on the field, talking shop with them. A lot of times alumni, when they're there, they get invited to speak to the team just briefly at the end of practice. It's a family. It really is. It's an Ohana environment. Same with some of the media that are down there. We've just known and seen through the years. It's going to be a bummer being down there. This will be my first time down there without the late great Rob Kikawa. He was such a presence along with Stephen Tsai down there on the I guess that would be the Eva end zone. And so yeah, it's just those things that you come to expect and experience, and we're getting back to normal finally 2 years later, amidst all sorts of chaos that we've had to go through. And so I'm happy for our guys that they're getting a D1 Hawaii football experience once again,
Which is just so valuable, right? And so the other big part of it is watching some of these position battles, watching what the offense looks like, what the defense looks like, obviously with some new leadership at the top as well as on both sides of the football. And so in your experience, how valuable are these spring practices for some of these guys going out trying to win jobs, right? Especially at the quarterback position. Like that's obviously the one position where it's like you got to have one guy, right? At least one guy. Some of these, there is a lot of turnover. We know that with the amount of graduations and just the absolute outflux of guys in the transfer portal and just about every position, right? I mean, you lose some of your best safeties, some of your best linebackers, some of your best corners on the offensive side of the football. You arguably your best receiver, your best slot receiver who's graduated off to the draft. Your starting running back, your starting quarterback. Some of the offensive linemen having their eligibility expire, some experience coming back there. But I mean, just about every position group is looking to fill very, very large holes. And so getting these guys on the practice field can be a huge, huge boost in trying to figure that out. But can you win a job in spring? It's early. There's a lot of football left, a lot of practices left with with the, the summer, with guys coming in during the summer, guys coming in during the fall, some of the youngsters, some of the transfers as well. Is it an opportunity to go win a job? Can you lose a job at this point? If things go poorly, especially for the quarterback position, right? I mean, you got Braden Shager coming back. The guy's got starting experience last year, mixed results, but you could see the building blocks for sure. A lot of potential there. You've got some other guys that have been on the roster for the last couple of years that I'm sure you can get into. And then you got Cam Cooper, the quarterback that transferred from Washington State, battling it out at quarterback. But it obviously is much more than just the quarterback position here, as we talked about, basically every position group.
Yeah, no, to answer your question, can you win a job in the spring? I would say absolutely. In the year that I walked on the team was between 2014 and 2015. Taylor Graham had been the starter for us. He was a transfer from Ohio State and played decent the previous fall, but they were definitely looking for the number 2 to kind of come and battle him. And that's whenever we saw Ikaika Woosley and Jeremy Higgins really battling for that spot. And up until the spring game, Ikaika broke out I think it was like a 65-yard run for a touchdown. That was the first time Coach Chow saw a viable dual threat option to take on Taylor Graham for the starting role. I remember being in those conversations and around that. And so it absolutely can. And I would say now more than even then, we have a true open race right now for the starting quarterback role, because yeah, granted, Shager saw time this last year, but he was not recruited by this coaching staff. This coaching staff, it's a very unique situation where they didn't recruit any of these guys. So in some ways, they don't have any sort of affiliation or loyalty to these guys. It's truly like, all right, you guys are here. Show us what you have. Show us what you got. I immediately think of my good friend Armani Eden, who has been balling out on scout team this last year, and people listening is like, yeah, that's just scout team, but he's playing against our first team defense and dicing them up on a daily basis. So I've been in his ear a ton right now, just saying, look, man, you're never going to get another opportunity than this one right now. Shevin is gone. He's going to be probably starting for San Jose this next year. We don't have an incoming solid quarterback option from Hawaii, at least right now, in my understanding from Hawaii high school football. So right now is your opportunity, all quarterbacks on the roster, to make yourself known. These coaches are looking for somebody to hang their coat on, and you just might be that guy. And I say that for all positions, that this is a tremendous opportunity to win favor, win a job, win the loyalty of your team. It's kind of off to the races, in my opinion.
There aren't a lot of incumbents on this roster.
Yeah.
And so it creates a lot of opportunity. And I think, as you point out there, Hunter, and we will see how things play out over the next, month or so as we get into spring practice. So valuable, and we'll see which guys sort of seize the opportunity, right? And how that looks. And it'll be quite interesting to see, especially on the offensive side of the football. And kind of wanted to get into this, Hunter, before we take our halftime break. I think the conversation kind of lends itself to it, but what that offense will look like, because we know Timmy Chang's background in a multitude of offenses, right? We think of him as run and shoot for sure. But he's worked on different staffs on different offenses when he was a coordinator at the Division II level, when he was a coordinator at the FCS level, working as receivers coach at a couple of different stops, obviously most recently at Nevada. I know he had the sort of real quick cup of coffee at Colorado State before getting the UH job. But, they weren't running the run and shoot there. It was an open type of offense, but a different look. And then you got Ian Shoemaker coming in, right? And that has been a topic of conversation, and even, some of the comments we get on Facebook, YouTube, our guy Al from VA, who's always in there, man. Shouts to Al as well. But he talked about, with Ian Shoemaker's fit, like what is exactly that offense going to look like, right? He talked about Coach Shoemaker on some of our other ESPN Honolulu shows, mentioned, hey, implementing quote aspects of the run and shoot, talking about tight ends. What does that look like, right? And then And then the report is, at least at this point, that during the installation of the offense, I've seen it termed sort of a hybrid offense, RPO, run pass option, some run and shoot elements that, Timmy Chang will be leading the receivers meetings for the University of Hawaii. That's basically the one position coach that they, at least to my knowledge, they still haven't filled, whether that's just going to be sort of taken on by Coach Chang as an added responsibility. We'll see. But what this offense looks like and how the working relationship is, right? How involved will the head coach be? Some head coaches pretty hands off, let their coordinators go do their thing. Some head coaches very involved, others sort of in between, right? There's a mixture of it for sure. But with Shoemaker's experience at Eastern Washington, where they put up some huge numbers, but it ended sort of, ominously, where he resigned a little bit into last season. But the numbers sort of just jump off the page at you with the way that they were able to score points. Again, it wasn't a run and shoot look. What does all that look like? And so how much does that important to you, Hunter, in terms of what they call it, what it looks like, and how does that factor into the quarterback race as well? Because not all QBs created equal.
Yeah, I think they're actually kind of protecting themselves in a sense by saying that they're going to have a little bit more of a hybrid offense. A lot of times coaches, whenever they start at a new college, though they have a long-term goal and a long-term plan on what style of an offense they want, they don't quite have the pieces to accomplish that just yet, because they are picking up where the last coach left off. And so again, I can only speak from my experience, but I watched it from the Norm Chow era into the Rolo era. Rolo obviously wanted to bring back the run and shoot, but we didn't have the capabilities from a player personnel standpoint to run the run and shoot right whenever he got in there. We had a lot of tight ends. We had a phenomenal running back in Diasime St. Just at the time that required a lot of touches for our team to be successful. So they kind of had to do this adaptive hybrid run and shoot scheme with a pro style kind of peppering on top of it, if that makes sense. I think we're going to see something similar with this coaching staff, at least in this first year. They're going to kind of figure out how they're all working together as a coaching staff, how this team is going to work together. What other pieces can they get before fall camp starts? All of that is going to kind of play a part here. But additionally, I like the fact that Timmy Chang is going to single-handedly look over the wide receivers as of right now. I always felt like we were on the most same page, if you will. We were most steadily on the same page whenever Rolo was in the room with all of us, where we could ask questions collectively instead of receivers over here, QBs over there. How do you want that ball thrown? Are we sitting it down at 12? Or are we sitting it down at 15? Those little things, although minute and small, pay huge dividends when you're actually out on the field. And when you're in the film room together, that stuff can be accomplished much easier.
Synergy, man. You got to have the synergy.
Totally.
As you build these sort of things. I'm curious, right? And that's why I'm very much looking forward to these spring practices once they get into, some of the 7-on-7, they get into some of the team, some of the 11-on-11 stuff. Like, what's it look like? What kind of concepts are they running? Who looks most comfortable in that from every position group, but obviously quarterback as well, who's maybe a little more natural fit in some of these type of things and how they can utilize that skill set. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. This is the time of optimism. This is the time where you're just sort of competing against yourself. It's a little lower stakes. Not that it's not high stakes, but a little lower stakes than the fall, obviously, when the wins and losses obviously count. All right, we're going to take a break here, come back. We'll get into some of the new additions, coaching staff being rounded out, as well as another, significant transfer perhaps on his way to the University of Hawaii. But before we head out for our halftime break, you may have heard of this amazing supplement called Astaxanthin. Doctors and pharmacists recommend it for everything from joint and muscle function to cholesterol health and cognitive function, even anti-aging. But did you know only one brand delivers 3 times more astaxanthin to your body, making it a better buy than the competition? Introducing Xanthicin, available at getxantho.com. Newtown Square Pharmacy, Down to Earth Kaka'ako, GNC Stores, and Pharmacare Hawaii. Again, learn more at getzantho.com. That's getzantho.com. All right, second half coming up.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
Second half time here on HFN. It's episode 28. Jordan and Hunter along with you. All right, we mentioned some of the recent additions to the program. You got 2 new hires within the last couple of weeks on the coaching staff. Etienne, who is hired as a defensive line coach, played at Eastern Washington. He's a 2005 grad. Last 3 seasons as the defensive coordinator at Eastern Washington, on staff since 2016. A little bit of a pipeline, obviously, developing to those paying attention with Ian Shoemaker, the offensive coordinator, coming over. He's been the associate head coach at EWash since 2017. He actually served as the acting head coach in the season opener for Eastern Washington 2 seasons ago. He's also coached the D-line at Cal Poly, 4 years as the D-line coach at Idaho, 3 years at Eastern Oregon. In a high school down there, he's coached some. He went to high school in Eastern Washington before playing for the Eagles out there in Cheney. Timmy Chang, in the official release put out by the university, saying, quote, "I'm extremely excited about our hire of Coach Enna as our defensive line coach. He is an amazing coach and an even better person. His experience as a defensive line coach and coordinator brings tremendous value to our staff and players." And then a non-field coaching role, if you will, Silas Clapham, hired as the director of player personnel. He spent the last 2 seasons as recruiting analyst at Nevada, was at Colorado State briefly with Jay Norvell, basically part of that coaching tree and staff with Timmy the last couple of years in Reno. Was the director of on-campus recruiting at Colorado State. That was his position, which obviously he was there for just a couple of months. He is from Bellevue, Washington, Bellevue High School in Washington. Powerhouse football program, for those that in the know. They were the ones that ended De La Salle's winning streak all those years ago. But he was a water polo player. He actually played water polo at Fresno State. Coach Chang saying excited about the hire of Silas Clapham, one of the most dedicated kids I've been around. He has the passion and drive to be one of the best in this industry. Those guys, you need those personnel guys off the field doing a lot of the grunt work, for lack of a better term, the paperwork, getting guys, everything in order. The personnel guys, director of ops, those type of positions. Those are the thankless jobs that can be very, very valuable if you've got good people in those positions. Also funny that Coach Timmy Chang refers to him as one of the most dedicated kids. Still not quite used to Timmy being, old enough to hire guys that young and talk about them sort of in that voice. It's still I think for a lot of folks, myself included, getting used to, but just kind of funny to see him bringing in the next generation of guys looking to get into the coaching profession. But Coach Enna, I think, brings a pretty good resume to the job as well for that defensive line position, as the defensive staff is basically rounded out.
Yeah, no, I think he seems to be the right guy for the job. I don't know a whole lot about this guy just yet, but if with the rest of the coaching staff that Coach Chang has assembled, I would say that if he has this sort of validation from Coach Timmy, he's going to fit in well with this staff and is going to do well for our players. That's for sure. As far as some of these other roster additions, Willen Free, Jordan, grad transfer from Fresno State. What do you think about having a Bulldog on the roster, man?
Yeah. I think it's kind of funny, right? We on the outside like to play up the rivalries, to play up sort of the animosity that exists in that. But especially in this day and age with the transfer portal, how all these things work, man, it's for players. I don't know if it's quite to that level, right? Like they're looking for opportunities, and I don't blame them. And he's a grad transfer. Like he spent a lot of time at Fresno State. He was part of their 2017 recruiting class. That's a while ago, and he played quite a bit at Fresno. He played both corner and safety extensively. Like he's got a number of starts at both corner and safety. Last year as a senior, appeared in 11 games, started at corner in the first 4. kind of tailed off a little bit in terms of his playing time, and maybe a reason he was looking for a new start. But that may be too much speculation on my point. But he started all 6 games in 2020. Remember, there was the abbreviated season due to COVID. Played at corner there as a sophomore. He played in all 12 games, started 10 of them at safety early in his career. Played in all 14 games, 2 starts as a redshirt freshman. He's a guy from Southern California. Went to Linwood High School. He's from Compton. Some good football down there in the city. And originally had committed to USC. Like, he was a USC verbal, and then ended up finding his way to Fresno State. And so, like, this is a dude who was highly regarded coming out of high school, played a lot at Fresno. Some of the transfers that end up at different places, even some of the guys coming in here, and there's no knock on them, but the reason they're looking for a fresh start, hey, maybe they didn't get playing time. Maybe they weren't, it didn't quite work out. Coaching change, fit didn't happen. That doesn't mean those guys can't play. The hope is obviously that they can, but in the instance of Free, like, he played a ton at Fresno and at multiple positions, which to me, that versatility is huge.
Yeah. I think the other thing to think about, just in this new world of college football, people so easily being able to transfer. I think we're entering an era of players as hired guns, if you will. The team loyalty, I can foresee, it's almost the age of free agency in college football. The once team loyalty, I'm a Rainbow Warrior for life kind of a thing. It wasn't even thought of as an option. I'm playing my college football at this school. Now, at the drop of a hat, if you think you have a better opportunity elsewhere, you're going to jump. You're going to take that opportunity. I mean, who wouldn't? This is the new landscape that these guys find themselves in. So, as we kind of discuss this a little bit more, I really hope this doesn't mean the end of even rivalries as we know it, because like, fan bases can make up a lot of energy behind rivalries, but if the players, the ones actually on the field, don't really care a whole lot, it might be the end of some of these rivalries as we know it.
It'll take some realigning, I think, some readjusting, because it is so new, right? And I think free agency, as you sort of likened it to, is the perfect analogy. It really is. Like, it's free agency, and these guys are free to go just about wherever they will be taken, wherever there is an invitation to come, and with that comes a sort of fluidity, a lack of attachment, right? And for better or worse, like, I'm all for player agency. I'm all for giving these guys more power, more freedom, with the way that coaches have always been able to make far more money and been able to leave at the drop of a hat and leave these guys hanging without any sort of repercussion, without having to sit out a year, without anything, right? Players should be afforded that as well. And so I think for a time being, I think we'll see that. I think we'll sort of see it sort of self-correct, where, we're witnessing that now, where the amount of dudes who are just stuck in the portal with no landing spot, like, I that'll kind of self-correct, I think, where it's like people will be a little more hesitant to just jump in the portal and without, a realistic destination on the other end, because the ultimate fear is that, hey, maybe you're looking for greener grass, but maybe there's no grass at all on the other side, and then all of a sudden you're a free agent without a home, and that's tough.
Yeah. Another way of looking at all of this too, I heard Coach Deion Sanders talk this last week about this new era of college football, even in recruiting, where they are recruiting much less high school players and looking to get all of their players from the portal. And the way he put it is this: why would I take a risk on a high school player that maybe hasn't made that jump physically, emotionally? There's a lot that goes into coming from high school into a college environment just as a student, but then you throw in there an athlete environment too, that there's a couple year buffer that you kind of have to get through as an athlete. but you can kind of skip right over that right now with the transfer portal, and there's no regulation just yet from the NCAA in terms of you have to take this amount of players from the high school level. This is however many you're allowed in the transfer portal. And so I think there's needing some regulation for a few levels that the NCAA needs to take a strong look at, or we're going to have a completely new environment that's kind of out of control very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I agree with you there. And I think the other thing that may be somewhat temporary, because it is interesting to hear guys like Deion Sanders, right? Craig Bowl at Wyoming said some similar type stuff in terms of how they're going to look at recruiting, because, you know, for a program like Wyoming, right? You bring in high school recruits, you develop them, and then you just become a feeder school for a Power 5 program, right? And is it worth it for group of 5 schools like Wyoming, like Hawaii, to really allocate a lot of their resources to to high school kids, only to see them, you know, after 2 or 3 years, they're gone because they've sort of outgrown the program, and UCLA or Virginia Tech or Cincinnati or, you know, Oklahoma come calling. Like that's something to consider. But I do think one of the other, you know, just to kind of finish my thought here, Hunter, the COVID year, which granted everybody an extra season. And so rosters are a little inflated. They're a little bloated in terms of just available bodies, right? And so the knock-on effect of that will be felt for at least a few more years. But once you sort of get back to the normal sequence of hey, yeah, you've got, you know, 5 years to play for, you know, sort of the old way to do it. But I mean, you look at like Amy Atwell, right? The Big West Conference Player of the Year in women's basketball for the University of Hawaii. Like, she first stepped on campus in 2016. Like, I think Laura Beeman mentioned that she's been there for all of but like 1 year that Laura Beeman's been on coaching staff. Like, that's how long Amy Atwell's been at the University of Hawaii. All of a sudden, you know, you get a redshirt year, you get a COVID year, you get an injury year, and all of a sudden you're there for 7 seasons or something. And so that's just an example, right? That's just an example that we're familiar with for Amy, who's one heck of a player. But that'll be felt for a little while, right? A guy like Wyland Free, he stepped on campus at Fresno State in 2017. That's 5 years ago. You know, it's basically looking at his 6th season of college football. And that's in part because of the COVID year and the added eligibility. And like, I'm all for it, but that does all of a sudden create fewer roster spots for high school kids coming out for the next, you know, 3-4 years. And that's another thing that I think will maybe sort of help the market correct itself, I guess, for lack of a better term, as we see how these roster situations play out. Stephen Tsai also reporting Tali Moy, a Waimea high school product, joining the team as a walk-on, as well as Brandon Mcgregor, who was sort of the talk of the open tryout. Mcgregor, who was in his late 20s, I guess is fair to say. He was a videographer on the team last year, was out there, you know, running around, and was one of the bright spots. And it sounds like he may have made the team. So shout out to those guys. It's pretty cool to see the different paths to Division I football.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who went through that walk-on process, went to tryouts, a lot of times, for those listening at home, the whole team shows up. Like, the actual football team hangs out on the outside of the field just to see who is out there. Also, there's usually when it comes to conditioning, it's kind of an enjoyment from the players to see how hard these walk-ons are pushed. I know it can be kind of a cruel environment, but you get exposed if you're supposed to be out there or not. And so all of that comes into play at the walk-on tryouts. And man, I give my guy a lot of credit, man. That's awesome to go from a kind of a supporting role on the team and then jumping into an active roster position. That sounds like a 30 for 30 in the making, Jordan.
Yeah, it's a really cool story, and we'll see what kind of role he and maybe Moy have with the team going forward. All right, as we sort of run up against it here, we'll kind of call things to a conclusion. I did want to get in our little overtime segment before we head out the door. It was a lot of fun this past weekend. It's been busy around lower campus with volleyball and baseball and softball and basketball seasons wrapping up. And you had Vanderbilt, the number 5 team in the country, come down over the weekend and sweep a 4-game set from the University of Hawaii. It was a sellout Friday night at Les Murakami Stadium, which is just electric and quite honestly, one of the best venues in all of college baseball. But the Vandy boys were in town. They're number 5 in the country. Some saying maybe the best team that has ever come down to play the University of Hawaii. So I was kind of curious, Hunter, in your time, who was the best team that you would say you faced, that a team that you were on faced during your time?
Well, off the top of my head, first of all, I think of that 2015 Ohio State team.
Yeah.
They went on to win the Natty that year. They had Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield. They had, I think it was Joey Bosa, the first Bosa brother, was on the other side. Our good friend of the show, RJ Hollis. That was actually his first collegiate start, was actually against Joey Bosa on that right tackle spot for him. So yeah, think of those guys. And then we played Michigan the next year, and they had Peppers, who was in the Heisman talk already on the defensive side of the football. I think they beat us 70-3 that day. And Michael Jordan was in attendance. It was the first year that Michigan had made that transition from Nike to the Jordan brand on their jerseys. So they were looking for an opportunity to put a hurting on somebody, and we just happened to be in their wake. So I think about those two teams right off the bat. But yeah, Vandy coming into the less. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they were good. They were really good. And Hawaii played pretty well Monday, losing that one by 1. The first 3 games were pretty decisive against the University of Hawaii. Yeah, number 1 Ohio State in 2015, and then number 7 Michigan back in 2016. It was only 63-3, Hunter, not 73-3.
Sorry,
but I will say the year before, 38 points. That's all you guys gave up against Ohio State. They were putting up some numbers that year, and against Ohio State.
I heard that Michigan fight song in my head for the next month for how many times they played it against us, man. Oh man. Yeah,
those are some cool experiences, and Hawaii will get another chance to go to the Big House here coming up in short order, with a chance to make some more memories, and hopefully the Michigan fight song isn't quite ringing in the same tune that it was for Hunter about 6 years ago. Maybe it'll be a celebratory thing. Who knows? Maybe they'll shock the world. But always a lot of fun, Hunter. We'll kind of put a close to it here. There's a whole lot we didn't get to that we can save for next week, as well as some of the comments we've received on some of the other topics. Speaking of road trips, one we wanted to get into about Australia. So fear not, Al. We will address that in the coming weeks as well. Again, shout out to our guy Jaron, who is going to piece this all together once we are done. We look forward to spring football coming up as well, and feel free, as always, everybody, to drop us a line on any of the social media platforms, whether you view us on Facebook or YouTube or listen to us on any of the apps as well. We welcome the feedback. We love the interaction, and it's a lot of fun to hear what the fans' perspective is as we embark on a new era here under Timmy Chang. So that'll do it for us for now on episode 28 of Hawaii Football Now, presented by Xanthison. You can hit me up at Jordan Helle. You can hit around Hunter at All Around ATH as well. Thanks to our other sponsors, Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USA FCU. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.